Hi, this is John Harcher. Welcome to episode 51 of Keep On Grooving. Almost said left turn Albuquerque there. We're gonna get ready for the box set next month with a little recap of the sessions and a rundown of the album from episode 18. So let's get right to it. Episode 51, Axis Bowl is Love, Redux. So like I said, this is kind of the prep episode for next month's box set. To save you time from going to hunt down episode 18, as much as I'd like you to do that, I'm going to do an abridged version of it now. I took out all the talk specific to the SACD and some of the extraneous comments. No jokes, please. For those of you watching the video, I put the link to the original episode below in case you haven't heard it in its full glory. But for now, let's do the sessions and the album rundown for Axis Bold as Love. The recording sessions for Axis began right around the time Are You Experienced hit the record stores in the UK in early May. May 4th marked the first sessions, and surprisingly, Noel got the first song. His She's So Fine was the first song begun for the album. They also recorded Taking Care of No Business, which didn't make the album, and began work on the first part of If 6 Was 9. They continued work on the second part of that song the next day under the title Symphony of Experience. They also recorded Mr. Bad Luck on the 5th as well, which also didn't make the album, but did make the radio show in 1988. On the 9th, he recorded the demo for Burning of the Midnight Lamp that appeared on the Purple Box. The band hit the road for the rest of May and didn't get into the studio again until June 5th. They did the instrumental take of Cat Talking to Me, but this vehicle intended for Mitch's vocals didn't get them until 20 years later. The band then headed for America and Jimmy's star-making appearance at the Monterey Pop Festival. After a bunch of dates in San Francisco, the band headed down to LA to record Burning of the Midnight Lamp and The Stars That Play with Laughing Sam's Dice. But after 3 days of recording at the end of the month, Chaz scrapped everything because he didn't like the sound. A week later, on July 6th, he took the band into Mayfair Studios, run by producer Tom Wilson and engineer Gary Kellgren. After 2 days, they got the basic tracks and overdubs done for Midnight Lamp, including Jimmy's first recorded use of his wah-wah pedal. Laughing Sam's Dice took another session to get down. And speaking of something I've mentioned before, Jimmy also popped into the studio a couple of times to hang out with his old band leader, Curtis Knight, and did some recording with him. That led to an unending stream of headaches and lawsuits. After that, the band released Midnight Lamp as a single in the UK in August, but it only hit number 18. A bit of a disappointment. However, the band was so busy, they didn't get back into the studio until October 1st to continue work on the album. They started with Little Miss Lover before moving on to One Rainy Wish and You Got Me Floating. By the middle of that week, Ain't No Telling and the title track began to take shape before Castles Made of Sand was recorded on the 5th. On the 6th, they went over to the BBC to record the first of 2 sessions for the broadcaster that month. The next week was busy on the road and over to Paris before they were able to return to the studio for just 1 day on the 14th. Considering the main song they worked on and created that day was Little Wing, they'd say it was time well spent. After the second BBC session on the 17th, the band actually had a somewhat quiet week and a half before returning to Olympic for the final week of October. Little Wing was finished up and Wait Until Tomorrow was put together. EXP was created on a Friday night, Spanish Castle Magic was done the next day, and Sunday was spent doing Up From the Skies and a full workout for Bold as Love. They spent the next 2 days mixing and finishing up overdubs. They finished right around Halloween when an incident happened. Supposedly, Jimmy took the tape for side 1 with him to a party to play for some friends. The next day, he came back to the studio and said he left them in a cab. Whether or not this is actually what happened, you got me. Some people doubt the veracity of this story, saying Jimmy lost them on purpose and needed an excuse, something like that. All I know is what Eddie Kramer says, they had to redo all of side 1 in 1 night. Whatever happened required Jimmy, Chaz, and Eddie to remix the side from scratch immediately since the record was due to track in a day. But they got it done, first the stereo mix, then spent the next day working on the mono mix. Axis Bold as Love is the last new Hendrix release to get a fully dedicated mono mix. So when going over the songs, I'll mention the major differences between the two mixes. Believe it or not, sometimes it's pretty substantial. The album kicks off with an odd little number called EXP. It features Mitch Mitchell in a sped up voice as a radio host for station EXP, and Jimmy as his old harmonica playing buddy, Paul Caruso, in the form of a UFO expert. Or maybe something else. The track descends into guitar chaos before fading out in under 2 minutes. Supposedly, the first mix of this was amazing, but when it had to be redone, Eddie said they didn't quite get it as good as the original. In the mono version, there's not so much of a need for all that swirling around sound, so they decided to cut it about 40 seconds short and speed up the end. Coming out of the chaos of EXP is Up From the Skies, a quiet, jazzy little number where Jimmy gets to work out with his wah-wah pedal for the first time on album. They decided to release this as the single from the album in the US. It wasn't exactly what the audience was looking for. The song was possibly played live once or twice early on, along with EXP. I actually like the mono version of this better. The stereo version has the instruments a little too spread out. Forcing the sounds through one speaker puts the music together pretty nicely. Next up is Spanish Castle Magic. This driving rocker has Jimmy playing the piano after being taught the chords by Eddie. It's supposedly named after a nightclub in the Seattle area. Now, believe it or not, this is the song from the album that was played the most in concert, all the way through to his very last shows in Europe. The mono version of this one falls into the category a number of the mono songs on this album are. The Things Get Lost in the Mix category. The piano Jimmy really wanted on the song gets buried behind the wall of sound from his guitars and Noel's 8-string bass. Wait Until Tomorrow is next, another quick little 3-minute number about Jimmy trying to get his girl to go out with him, but she takes so long to decide, her dad ends up shooting him. It's actually funnier than it sounds. The mono version sounds pretty good here. I don't really have a preference between the stereo or the mono on this one. Ain't No Tellin' is up next. It's another quick little rocker. This one's barely a minute 45. Chaz must have been in heaven. Now, I would have thought something like this would be perfect in mono, but it's one of those ones that's a bit too cluttered. Little too much going on. Next is Little Wing. The album's most famous song was possibly inspired by Jimmy's late mother. The glockenspiel certainly gives it a different feel than the ballads on the previous album. Most of the cover versions of this song repeat the verses twice, but here, Jimmy does them only once before launching into a lyrical solo that fades off. He did the song live quite a bit in 1968, but after Royal Albert Hall, it pretty much disappeared from the set list. In mono, Jimmy's vocals are moved to the front, which is good, but the solo guitar at the end is shoved behind the vocals to the point where you can barely hear it. Not the effect I think they were going for. Side 1 ends with If 6 Was 9. This is one of the tracks recorded during the May sessions. When the one-night remix was done, they couldn't figure out exactly how the song was supposed to sound. Luckily, Noel had a reel-to-reel copy of it in his flat, so he went there and got it. You have to wonder where he kept it. It was practically falling off the stool and all crumpled up. They had to practically iron it out to play it. That tape may have been the source for the 6-minute mono version on the 2000 box set. This version was remixed into stereo and trimmed by 30 seconds. The mono has the recorder towards the end shoved to the front quite a bit. By the way, the footsteps throughout the song are courtesy of Graham Nash, Gary Walker, and Chaz Chandler. You Got Me Floating, a swirling little rocker, kicks off side 2. The band really didn't like it all that much, so they brought in a few guest singers on the chorus. Listen closely, and you may recognize one of the background singers as Move and ELO founder Roy Wood. Supposedly, everyone involved wasn't particularly thrilled with this one. Maybe they had more expectations for it that they weren't able to achieve. The riff did turn up a couple times live, but they never did the whole song, at least to my knowledge. The mono version loses the little swirling at the beginning and falls kind of to that cluttered category where everything just kind of falls on top of one another. Next up is Castles Made of Sand, another quiet lyrical number about 3 people dealing with the transient thing that is life. The second verse harkens back to his roots since he was part Cherokee from his grandmother. Lots of backwards guitar floating around on this one.
And believe it or not, I like the mono one of this one better than the stereo, but just by a little bit. The quieter songs tend to have the instruments nicely positioned on the mono mixes. With She's So Fine, Noel gets his first song on an Experience album, and it's a quick little piece of British pop flower power. Jimmy adds some nice embellishments along the way, and Mitch drives the song from behind his drum kit. Mono's okay, nothing too drastic, nothing too thrilling either. Next up is One Rainy Wish, also known as Golden Rose. What, another ballad? So soon? Jimmy must have been in the mood, I guess. This one sounds like a sequel to May This Be Love from Are You Experienced, and it continues the color motif on this side that started out in Castles Made of Sand. The mono on this one does miss the swirling round bits from the stereo version. This album had been a little light on the hard rockers, but Jimmy makes up for it in one 2-minute and 20-second song, Little Miss Lover. He cranks up the wah-wah pedal and slams it through this semi-follow-up to Foxy Lady. There's an acetate version out there where Jimmy starts out the song with a wolf whistle. The mono version doesn't quite sound as well as it should. You want these songs to kind of punch it out, and again, it's just a little too cluttered. Plus, there's an odd double vocal right at the beginning. It sounds like somebody forgot to turn it down, so another demerit for it there. The side in the album ends with Bold as Love. Like Are You Experienced, the title track ends the album, and the color motif is in full force here. The original track runs 7 minutes, but what Jimmy, Chaz, and Eddie decided to do is have Mitch do a little run down the drums, then have it switch sides and go out of phase. The song would return, but sped up a whole key. It's an ending you really don't get in mono since you can't hear the drums go from side to side, so what's the point there? So they wind the song down a little early on the mono version. Now, the funny thing is the missing tape from side 1 never really turned up, but an alternate stereo mix of the whole album did. Some European LPs and the first CD releases on Polydor in the 80s had a slightly different mix, which is also known as the safe stereo mix. If you were listening to it on the radio or over your speakers, you probably wouldn't hear a major difference. But if you had your headphones on, there's a slight tweak in the vocals, some changes in instrument position, and overall, it's a little softer sounding. Now, where did it come from? It's probably what it says it is. It was a dub of the stereo mix for safety purposes. But One Rainy Wish is almost completely different. It's basically the one that was on Live and Unreleased as an unreleased version. Yet another Hendrix mystery goes unanswered.
Now, since the box set will also contain the complete Stockholm concert from September 5th, 1967, which was on the Stages box set back in 1991, I'd figured I'd put that in here too, so here's my rundown of that show from episode number 7, Boxed In. All 8 seconds of it, and in my COVID voice.
The show started with Sgt. Pepper's and included the 4 singles, along with Foxy Lady, Fire, and a rare early I Don't Live Today.
So what we'll do next episode is do the same thing we did with the Electric Lady box set from last year. Do an unboxing video, then run down the contents live on air, or live to video anyway. We'll first go over the 2 audio Blu-rays coming out on the same day with their Atmos mixes, then do the box itself. And the first 2 discs are just the original album in stereo and mono mixes, so I'll just give my brief impressions of how they sound in comparison to the SACD. Then we'll do the track-by-track rundown of discs 3 and 4 and talk about the Blu-ray and new Atmos mix for Axis. I'll also add in tracks from the 2 previous box sets, Jimi Hendrix Experience, aka the Purple Box, and West Coast Seattle Boy, for those of you who want to make a playlist for a more comprehensive, what word am I going to use? Experience. Now, I deferred getting the box set on release day for an additional discount, along with catching it on a price drop at Amazon, so it only cost me like $51. I'm targeting to do the episode right before Jimmy's birthday on November 27th, which happens to be Thanksgiving for those of us here in the States. So you'll be able to veg out after dinner and either listen to the audio version or watch me pick apart the box set on video. We've already got 3 preview tracks, the Stone Free Up From the Skies demo, Take 30 of Burning of the Midnight Lamp, and Take 1 of You Got Me Floating. They all sound very good, but leave some intriguing questions that hopefully the liner notes will shed some light on. We'll know soon enough. Now, right as I finished writing this, word came that Ace Frehley passed away, and right on the day they announced the 50th anniversary set for Dress to Kill. Talk about bad timing. Ace may not have been overly technical, but he made up for it in energy and showmanship. I mean, the whole thing with the lit-up guitar that went flying into the air at the end of his solo. He inspired a whole generation of kids to pick up the guitar and be rock stars. My buddy Ray is a monster Kiss fan. He not only had Kiss on all the time in his car, well, that and Rush, but also Frehley's Comet, Ace's solo band in the mid-'80s. We listened to that since, we're mid-'80s kids. The first song in that record is Rock Soldiers, which he turned into a tribute to his survival after a horrible car crash brought on by his substance abuse. Ace is back and he told you so. That he was. It's kind of hard to describe now how big a phenomenon Kiss was back in the 70s. I mean, they weren't played all that much on the radio, but everybody seemed to know them because their look was just so unique. I mean, they even had action figures made for them. David had Paul Stanley. Too bad they never got the rest of the set. I mean, they also had a made-for-TV movie, Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, Anthony Zerbe, who's still with us, by the way. Ace was not in his best shape there, but I just love his ad-libs going to say, "We take a rocket ride." Oh, there's the spaceman, all right. I got to see him a couple times in the mid-'90s. The first time was with my brother-in-law and my sister over at the old Birch Hill nightclub in Old Bridge, where Metallica used to live, by the way. Then soon after that, they did the Unplugged show, which led to the full-on reunion that we saw at the Garden in 1996. It was me, my brother-in-law Chuck, Ray, Darren, one of Darren's brothers, and his wife, and we just had a really cool time. And Ace does have a big link to Jimi Hendrix through Eddie Kramer. Remember, Eddie did Kiss's Demos, the Alive album, which is supposed to get its own box set soon, the Rock and Roll Over album, and Ace's solo record that gave us probably his signature song, New York Groove. Now, this passing on top of Ozzy's a few months back, they're going fast. Enjoy them while you can. But on a happier note, happy 84th birthday to Billy Cox. We've gone over his contributions to Jimmy's legacy quite a bit, and he's still around to embody it. He was a true friend at a time and a place where Jimmy needed it. Thanks for everything, Billy. Still one of the thrills of my life to have met you and Eddie over at the old Virgin Records back in 2001. And on a final happy note, you just heard me mention my friend Ray. Well, his oldest, my distaff nephew, just got married. Steph and Steph. Well, it's an easy way to mix up the monograms on the towels. Now, Steph is a big fan of the podcast. When I saw him recently, he basically was jumping out of his skin. When are you going to get some new episodes up? So consider this a wedding present from Uncle John. I'm sure the wife will be thrilled. Next time it'll be the Bold as Love box set with 2 of the album's mixes. Notice I didn't say both. Demos, live material, and a brand new Atmos mix. Plus 2 more Jimmy's releases on the same day. After nothing all year, we get inundated. That's next time on Keep On Grooving. Please hit the subscribe button if you like what you're hearing. I'll try to get back to doing more of it. I'm John Harjar. Thanks for listening.